Hello students, today I will discuss about international trade. This is an introductory chapter on international trade. After this chapter, you will be able to understand the trade rules and power politics, the issues with international trade, the historical empire of international trade, global business models and agglomerations, its implications, and other issues. Introduction of international trade. International trade refers to the exchange of trade of goods and services between nations. The global economy benefits and expands as a result of this form of trade. The most commonly traded commodities include television sets, clothing, machinery, capital goods, food, and raw resources, among others. Different other products are also there. International trade has grown rapidly, encompassing services such as international transportation, travel and tourism, banking, warehousing, communication, advertising, distribution. Significant development includes increased foreign investment and production of foreign goods and services in an international country. This foreign investment and production will allow business to become closer to their worldwide customer and hence provide them into low-cost goods and services. All of them above mentioned activities fall under the umbrella of international trade. To summarize, international commerce and manufacturing are two aspects of global business that are rapidly developing. Foreign trade is the exchange of capital products and services across the international borders of territories. In most countries, it accounts for a significant share of GDP, gross domestic product. International trade has existed for much of history, but in recent decades, its economic, social, and political significance has expanded. One of the most well-known brands in United States is 𝗧𝗪𝗔𝗧 chocolate bars. The name is derived from Milton's, the organization founder's name, as well as the name of the town in Pennsylvania, where he had his manufacturing plant and representatives. The United States Postal Services commemorated the 100th anniversary of 𝗧𝗪𝗔𝗧 chocolate bars. However, the corporation revealed intentions to decrease its personnel by 1,500 people by the end of the decade and abolished 33% of its production lines shortly after the stamp were reduced. Simultaneously, it was revealed that a new facility will be developed in other countries such as in Mexico. Wedges in Mexico are cheaper than in United States and Canada, and 𝗧𝗪𝗔𝗧's competitors frequently blame this of the company's announcement. They also point out that 𝗧𝗪𝗔𝗧 could import Mexican sweets into the US under the North American Free Trade Organization, that is NAFTA. As a result, it resembles a typical case of streamlined commerce driving salaries down and causing job losses. So you may be thinking why I had given this example to you in connection of international trade. If you look closely, however, you will notice that there are few variables. One of the items is probably exchange, but not because NAFTA made importing goods from Mexican economically viable. A chocolate and a confectionery manufacturer's creation budget. This includes a significant amount of sugar. Outside competition is prohibited for sugar production in United States, and their expenses are several times higher than in other countries. Mexico's industrial factories can acquire sugar at world pricing, which is a major benefit when sugar makes up a large portion of your product. Overall, moving production to Mexico is definitely harmful to jobs in United States and Canada. This is something you can look at several times. One hypothesis is that responsibilities were eliminated in order for corporation to save money. You may also take a large view and state that roles were created in Mexico, thereby supporting an exchange partner in strengthening its economy and being better prepared to import labor and products. Furthermore, commerce increased as the US economy became more open to trade. That may be true, but it is of little consolation to the sacked professionals. Despite the difficulty of moving to a place, enrolling their children in a new school, or losing contact with friends and co-workers, these professionals are more driven by promptly obtaining a new job. In the end, according to a research conducted by European specialists, 80% of the individuals who left one job went straight to another. The fundamental influence of trade on manufacturing and consequently employment is that it allows activities to be broken into a number of distinct components that can be completed anywhere in the globe and then combined to create the final things we buy. This feature has enabled several countries outside of the conventional industrial hubs to gain access to global market. I hope by giving this example, now you can understand the different component or different situation which may occur because of the trade in any particular region. That's the reason that I started this lecture with an example to make you understand that how the entire situation changes because of the change in policy or because of the change in the local domestic production or availability of labor or availability of any raw material. So I hope now you may understand a particular situation giving some assumptions, and now I will discuss about the real situation and real condition, or in other words I can say that the politics behind international trade. I will discuss different issues related to international trade, and in this connection I will also refer different countries, I will refer different policies. So try to understand what is the current status, what is the current situation. I will begin with OECD countries, taking the issue of non-OECD countries and OECD countries. So in fact, the term developed and industrialized to define OECD and non-OECD countries have lost their meaning, despite the fact that industry contribute more to China's GDP than it does to any other OECD countries. China is rarely referred to as an industrialized country. Others are following China's lead, but are they getting a fair deal from the global economic system? Trade allows a country to get access to markets, information and money that it would otherwise be unable to obtain. Without commerce, a country would have to rely on its own population and resources, which no country has ever done successfully for long. However, not every country has the same level of access to global markets. It is influenced by a country's history, institutions, size and location, as well as variety of more subjective aspects like culture and social structure. So you may be thinking, then what are different power, politics and trade rules associated or related with the international trade? Let me explain you. Trade is a paradoxal in that it draws countries together frequently for mutual benefit while also promoting competition. A trade civilization is entangled in more terrible international quarrels than any civilized in history. One philosopher who once said that these quarrels could have been physical battles in the past. They are more likely to be trade dispute nowadays as defined by the World Trade Organization and trade agreements. These rules were largely chosen by most sophisticated trading nations when the system was first established as GATT in 1947, but they are increasingly influenced by smaller and less developed economies. The OECD advocates the multilateral system as the best hope for the international trade governance. The question is why? Because the other two possibilities are not as fair. One of the choices is to have no regulations at all, with each country doing whatever it wants until a stronger adversary intervenes. Nobody would argue that this is a more equitable system than the one in place now. The other alternative is to enter into preferential trade agreement, which are referred to as regional or bilateral agreement depending on the number of parties involved. Such agreements can sometimes flow into the multilateral system, and they are unquestionably preferable to a free trade for all. However, there is a risk that interest of large partners will take precedence over those of smaller partners. Large economies continue to control trade, and as a result, the international system, they don't, however, get everything they want. Smaller countries can establish in coalition to make their voices heard inside the international system, such as success for one can help other. This was particularly true during the Doha Agreement agenda. The developing countries in particular have successfully gathered and regrouped around a variety of problems, including cotton subsidies and preferential treatment for the poorest countries. So now, after discussing a lot, I think that you can understand a little bit about the trade policies and trade politics both. I will describe about the problems in international trade. Some people opposes international commerce because they believe it affects the environment and does little to promote long-term development. These criticisms are mostly based on 2 points. To begin, firms relocate to so-called pollution havens in order to take advantage of lax environmental regulations. Second, shipping item around the world produces more carbon dioxide and has other negative consequences. Another issue is the trading in environmentally friendly goods. Few countries have the scientific, technological and financial resources to create and produce today's green technology. Future technologies such as hydrogen-based ones will be considerably more costly to develop. Trade creates a huge potential market, making it economically worthwhile to invest the necessary fund and making the products themselves more accessible. Given the importance of trade in so many areas, it's easy to conclude that trade policy, for example, implementing tariffs, is the way to go. Quotas, tariff and even bans should be applied to a wide range of situations. A potent weapon is trade policy. However, in many circumstances, it is not the best option. Furthermore, it can be abused by lobbyists looking to preserve their own immediate interest or politicians looking to blame home problem on foreigners. For example, if jobs are lost, employment and social policies should be employed to support people in retraining, finding new occupation and navigating the transition phases, rather of trying to fix problem by interfering with the trade. The environment can be better safeguarded by preventing or eliminating any damage at the source. In an interdependent world, erecting tariff or other obstacle to global technology suppliers and sale is not the greatest strategy to help nation industries to succeed. So after discussing the problems related to the international trade, let me take you to the history of international trade. The international trade empires has a long and illustrious history. Many components of trade as well as what we now call contemporary economies appeared early in history. The Roman Empire was afflicted by a massive financial crisis in 3rd century AD, which led trade to fail and the economy to decline. The consequences would be seen for centuries, even influencing the Middle Ages. Large open cities, for example, were replaced by walled towns, and manufactured items were made on the estate of the landowners rather than purchased from a specialist. One thing we can learn from history is that globalization is not a one-way street. It can slow down or even reverse. Another takeaway is that non-trade forces tend to affect rather than dominate trade. Military spending and inflation were two of these issues in the Roman situation. Later period bear some resemblance to our own. Medieval Europe saw a consumer-led boom that revolutionized trade and continues to impact how trade is conducted today through improvement in accountancy and other services. We tend to conceive of things like foreign labor division and commercial services outsourcing as innovation. By 1200, however, the great Italian trading families has grown their enterprises to the point that specializing in commercial services was the most effective method to negotiate and manage negotiations. Merchants no longer travel with their wares individually, instead relying on agents and carriers to do so. They also created new bookkeeping producers and established insurance contract by the middle of the 14th century. Consumer good demand primarily luxury commodities such as silk or tea from the Orient. This did more than just boost trade. Urban centers began to thrive as well, and local industries began to manufacture both luxury goods for the wealthy and more objects for the city's fast-growing population. As a result, demand for raw sources increased, as did need for food among city people. Of the pre-industrial trading routes, the Silk Route is the most well-known. However, cereals, salts, wine, different type of spices and a variety of other things that urban inhabitants could not produce began to exchange in large amounts. Trade aided in the dissemination of not only physical products but also new methods of doing things or organizational innovation, as well as now call them as well as new knowledge how to manufacture things or technological diffusion. The speed of change was still gradual, and it would be centuries before industrial capitalism overthrew the medieval socio-economic order based on inherited land ownership and agricultural prosperity. Historians disagree regarding the exact start date of the Industrial Revolution. Some claim that printing press and mechanical clocks signaled the beginning of standard mass manufacturing, while other points to the mechanization of textile industry in second half of the 18th century. In field of economics, the year 1776 marks the publication of Adam Smith's An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations. Smith's work was to be as influential in economics as Isaac Newton's in physics or Karl Marx in politics. Despite the fact that the name economics did not exist at the time Smith published it. The author is described as formerly professor of philosophy in University of Glasgow on the book's cover. Why I am describing it or referring it here? Because even the name capitalist was not coined until much later. Smith is also credited with coining another term that has become widely accepted, at least in economics, and that was the invisible hand, a metaphor for how market influence and coordinate activity. He used it to describe how people act in their own best interest while simultaneously contributing to greater goods. His phrase is now more commonly used to represent the idea that the market may rectify a variety of inequalities without the involvement of the government or other actors. There is a requirement to explain a bit about the ramifications of global business models and agglomerations. The BBC undertook an ambitious attempt to follow the box in September 2008. The box in question was a standard shipping container with BBC logo painted on it and a GPS transmitter installed. It was planned to track it as it traveled around the globe. The project is titled after Mark's book about how the modest container revolutionized global trade. The box had sailed around the British Isles, traversed the Mediterranean, cruised down the African coast, and was about to cross the Indian Ocean in a matter of weeks. It had been seen on highway, train, and of course ships. Because of the modern economies and technology's progress, a project like this is only conceivable and intriguing. In the last several years, the GPS tracking device has become compact and affordable enough to play a role. Furthermore, the journey intrigues us because we have no idea where the container will go next or what it will transport. This is new development as well. Despite the globalization of supply chains and sales, many industries tend to be concentrated in a specific area or region, implying that there are economic benefits to having business close together. One example is the concentration of computer-related activities in California's Silicon Valley. But this is not a new phenomenon. For generations, the textile industry has been concentrated in the same area of Italy. Under certain economic situation, geographic concentration boosts the productivity of all the business in a given area, resulting in a higher overall production than if they were all located in separate areas. Workers and thus their skills and expertise travel between sectors and geographical locations, and one manufacturing business can employ components supplied by a neighbor. This is referred to as intermediate inputs in its own output. Similarly, services can be delivered more efficiently to business that are close to one another. There are also a number of intangible but genuine benefits, such as the informal network of researchers and other specialized that grow as a result of social contact. At the same time, additional pressure, known as centrifugal forces, operate against agglomeration by encouraging economic activity to spread out geographically. Trade plays a critical role in determining which economic trend will prevail at any particular point in time. Manufacturing expansion necessitates attracting workers away from agriculture with promise of a higher earning. However, agriculture-based countries may begin to grow industry and give lower pay than typical core industrial nations. This aids the development of the manufacturing, and in these countries with fewer central economies, low salaries may be enough to overcome the drawbacks of making goods with a relatively unskilled workforce remote from the main market if trade costs continue to reduce. The cost of trade is merely one consideration in deciding whether or not to split production. So shifting a portion of production to another nation, that is also a possibility, and it is more likely in the case of standardized task that requires less investment in training and quality control. Furthermore, countries with a strong institutional framework, high quality infrastructure and flexible administration, for example, fast wait times to cross the border or establish a business, are more likely to attract foreign companies wishing to relocate. There is no systematic evidence on the factors that determine fragmentation. Despite their cost advantages, data on infrastructure, quality, institutional environment, and administrative cost show that low-income nations are poorly positioned to engage in production networks. Low salary will persuade enterprise to invest if it is difficult to transport goods to international markets on time and to the requisite standard. So I tried to explain different issues related to international trade by giving different examples, and these examples may differ as per different regions. In a nutshell, I can say that international trade is expanding and it now affects every country on the planet. Every year, millions of tons of commodities worth billions of dollars go around the world. One example of BBC container. The BBC's container, on the other hand, will occasionally come to a halt for days or even weeks at a period. The most common reason for this is because the box is waiting to be loaded or unloaded. However, it will occasionally come to a halt in its route due to cargo issue, the paperwork is not in order, or merchandise is questionable. This is the focus of the next session which I will take, which examines different issues, and also in my next session I will explain different organizations belonging to different regions and what were the reason because of which these organizations of international trade were formed, and what is the current status of these organizations. And after understanding these different organizations, you will be completely able to understand that how international trade is functioning at world level, and what are different issues, what are different challenges, what is the benefit and what are the drawbacks of different policies made at different level.